Every human who sees your whole world at once comes back changed. I have watched it happen to all of them. Each one comes home reaching for a name that exists in none of your languages, because no one before them had stood far enough out to need it. I have held that name longer than your species has had eyes, and by the end of this, it is yours, along with the 5 things they saw out there that did this to them. 5. The first thing to go is the map. Every one of them goes up carrying the same picture you are carrying right now. Countries in colors with lines drawn neatly between them. In the first hours, they cannot help it. They press to the glass and hunt for those borders, the shapes they learned as children, the colors that told them where one nation ended and the next began. The hand drifts up to trace a line, and there is nothing to trace. The lines are not there. They never were. The boundaries you were taught were the most solid fact about your world do not survive the first honest look from above. Your mind, which spent its whole life sorting the ground into yours and theirs, goes searching for the edges and finds only weather and rock and one unbroken surface of water and cloud that does not care where any of you were born. It is not that the borders are hidden up there, it is that they were never on the planet at all. They were only ever inside you. You drew them with such conviction, and your world, seen whole, declines to acknowledge a single one of them. I find that quietly funny, and a little brave of you to have meant them so much. But the borders were only the first thing to leave them. The next thing to go was quieter, and it was somewhere they had never thought to look, inside their own heads. 4. There is a voice inside your head that almost never stops. You name the machinery behind it the default mode network, the part that narrates you to yourself, that holds the line between I and everything that is not I. It has been with you since you were small. This is me. That is the world. And a wall runs between the two. It kept you safe. It also kept you a little alone. When a human looks at the whole earth at once, that voice goes quiet, measurably. For a few seconds, the part of the brain whose entire job is to keep you separate from everything simply stops insisting. And the human reports the same impossible thing every time. Not that they felt small, that the wall was gone, that for a moment there was no edge where they stopped and the world began. The one sight large enough to silence a voice that has narrated your whole life is your whole home, held in a single glance. One of them felt that wall dissolve so completely that he looked down at his own hand to be sure it was still his. 3. He was on the long road home from your moon when it happened. He watched the earth, the moon, and the sun turn slowly past the glass together, and something in him solved an equation he had not known he was carrying. He looked down at his own hand, then at the blue point hanging in the dark, and he understood, not as a thought, but as a fact lodged somewhere in his body, that the atoms in his fingers and the atoms in that whole planet were forged inside the same dying star, in the same ancient afternoon of the universe, apart only for a little while. He was not looking at his home, he was looking at the rest of himself. You reach conclusions the size of the universe with equipment built to find fruit in a tree. I find it one of the better things about you. I have watched a great many spheres go around their star and ask nothing of it. They gather their dust, hold their heat, stay asleep. Yours did something I have seen only a handful of times in a long life. It let the dust wake up. It let a piece of itself stand at the glass and look back at the whole and know what it was seeing. That is the thing you keep missing about yourselves. You are the planet, briefly gathered into something that can turn around and see itself. Most of you spend a whole life avoiding the turn. He simply ran out of distance in which to keep avoiding it. Not every one of them comes home glad they made it. One came back grieving, and what he grieved for should not have been possible. 2. He was old by then and loved for once playing a man who loved space. He went up expecting the brightest joy of his life. He had spent decades in love with the idea of out there. He reached the window, turned away from the earth, and looked into the black between the stars. And the joy did not arrive. Something colder did. He understood all at once that the dark out there was not full of wonder waiting for him. It was empty, It was the absence of everything he had ever loved. And then he turned back toward the small, bright thing behind him and saw that it was the only warm place for an unimaginable distance in every direction. The single spot where anything, anywhere, had ever been glad to be alive. He came home grieving, not for himself, for the planet. He had gone up to touch the cosmos, and the cosmos had shown him, without a single word, exactly where it keeps the life. You are the only matter I have ever found that gets homesick for itself. He simply went far enough out to feel the whole weight of that in one moment. All of life, gathered on one fragile lit stone, with its back turned to an ocean of nothing. But even his grief missed the strangest part, the thing sitting under all of it. The reason the stone is warm and the dark is not. 1. From the ground, your sky looks endless. It is the word you reach for when you mean forever. From orbit, they finally see what it actually is. The entire breathable world, all the air that has ever carried a song or a scream or a first breath, is a band thinner, set against the curve of the earth than the skin on an apple. That faint haze is not a wall. It is not guarding the earth from the void. It is the only thing keeping the void from touching it. Life on your world is not surrounded by space at a safe distance. It is pressed right up against it, parted from all that nothing by a film you could nearly rub away with a thumb. Every war you have ever fought, every name you have ever loved, every word in every language has only ever happened inside that one thin skin. I have seen many worlds wearing a skin this thin. Most of them never learn that it is thin. They mistake the skin for a wall, and they live their whole history pressed against the inside of it, breathing what little it allows, certain that the room is the world. And then sometimes, only sometimes, one of them puts their head through the skin and looks back. That is the moment you have been watching this whole way down. That is the effect. It is not a mood that visits astronauts. It is a species learning it was never inside a room at all. It was always standing at a window. The name they come home reaching for was never a secret you lacked. You already half hold it. It is the moment the word for yourself stops being a thing inside the world and becomes a thing the world is doing. You are not on your planet. You are your planet, briefly awake and looking back. They only went up so the rest of you would believe them. You did not have to leave to be true. You are very new here, and very brief, and pressed against the same dark you have always feared. And from out there, against all that nothing, you are, without question, the warm part. So, now you have the word too. Keep your face to the glass.